Hey y'all, it is Nikki. Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk first drafts. First of all, I want to thank everybody who commented such lovely, encouraging things on my last video, which I will put somewhere up here and at the end of the video, and in the description below. If I remember, I am terrible for that. The video was all about sort of like writer discouragement and the way that like the enemy can really get to us and attack us and bring us down and make us feel like our writing is pointless and keep us from using our gifts for God. I realized after the fact that like, oh wait, did it totally sound like I was just fishing for encouragement? That was not my intention. I was just trying to like put my heart out there in case anyone else was feeling attacked in the same way. Maybe they could be encouraged by it. I wanted to be a God hug to someone. But regardless, the response that I got from that video was just so heartwarming and so encouraging. Thank you to all of you who took the time to comment and just really encourage me and remind me why I'm doing this, because it really made a big difference for me. So thank the Lord in you. Huge blessing. Next up, status report on my NaNoWriMo project. I am 17,000 words into my Peter Pan retelling, so that's roughly 50 computer pages, single-spaced. Thank the Lord, I feel like I'm coming out of the sort of funk that I was in last week and for my last video, where I just wasn't feeling very motivated for Nano. Even though I'm pretty far from my initial goal of 50,000 words, I don't think I'm going to make 50,000 words by the end of the month. I still feel good about the progress that I've been able to make. I've been able to be diligent and to get words down and to get to know my characters a little better, which is great because I was not ready to start this draft with NaNoWriMo. So the fact that I've been able to get 17,000 words down is just huge blessing. Now, when I say that I wasn't ready, I should clarify that I am a plotter. So I like to have as much of my story mapped out as clearly as possible in advance, so that when I get to the writing phase, all I really have to worry about is having fun putting everything into the right words. I like to know who my characters are, exactly who they are, what they're wanting, what their motives are. I want to know where the story is heading, what all the crucial plot points are, what all the in and outs and reveals are going to be. I often have little conversations or moments written either on paper or in my head in advance that I can then sort of feather into the story once I start writing it. I'm not a super spontaneous person, so I like to know where everything is headed. That's just the way that I write. That might not be you. You might be a pantser, which means that you like to fly by the seat of your pants when you write a little more. You sit down, you let it come to you, you just go with the flow. Lots of successful and very talented authors use this method. And to be honest, no offense to any pantsers out there, I find that pretty mind-blowing. The idea of just like sitting down and making something up as I go along and being happy with the final result just seems like impossible to me. That's just not the way I work. That is not the way my creative juices flow at all. I have, however, done a teeny bit of plantsing. My Nano project last year, Operation Stars, was a little bit of a combo of both. I definitely did sort of go with the flow. I didn't know exactly what perspective was going to come next at any given point in the story. I went with whatever character felt right, wherever the story seemed to be leading me, but at the same time, I knew my characters super well, and I knew the shape of the story, I knew the key events that needed to happen and the order that they needed to happen in. So it was mostly a plot situation, but with a little bit of pantsing thrown in. Actually, this project, Operation Ever, which is not the actual name of the book, just the name of the project, is probably the most plantsy thing I've ever done. And that obviously is a technical term, so just throw that out with your friends, and if they ask, just say, it's a writer thing. The thing is, I've had this project in my head for years. I wanted to do a Peter Pan retelling forever. It is a passion of mine. But it was a pretty fuzzy story for most of those years. It's only very, very recently that I've really ironed out the story into something that I could actually start writing, and that was just for NaNoWriMo. I really wanted to have something to work on this month, so I tackled this story and just tried to pin down as many details as I possibly could. But even as I'm writing it, there are so many things that I don't know. I'm not that well acquainted with my characters. I haven't had enough time to get well acquainted with them. I have a little bit of an ensemble going on, so some of my characters I'm more familiar with, but more the periphery ones I'm like making up as I go along. I'm figuring out what they look like as I go along, which normally is not me. Normally that's one of the first things I pin down. I also wrote most of my outline in like the day or couple days before NaNoWriMo, which is also really out of character for me. Usually the like processing deliberating, tweaking, perfecting process is a huge part of my sort of outlining phase. So I feel like my outlining phase of writing was sort of chopped in half, which feels a little bit unsettling for me. I'm used to having things a little more nailed down than that. All that to say, I'm flying a little more blind than I would normally be flying while writing a first draft, which on one hand is a little bit scary, but on the other hand, it's actually kind of cool and it's fun and it's fine because this is a first draft. And for the first time in my life, I think I'm starting to understand what that actually means. Lots of people and experts talk about first drafts like they're this kind of walking disaster that you have to get to the end of and then take a blowtorch to so that you can just start fresh and scrap it and jump into your next draft. And it's all good and valuable because it's all part of the writing process. I always assume that that must be valid because, like, so many people say it, but at the same time, there was a really big part of me that questioned it and just thought, like, why bother with all of that when I can just write my story perfectly the first time, love it in the first draft, sell it to a publisher, and kickstart my career with it. It's taken me a long time to get over that, and I'm still not 100% sure that I am over it. Even after writing my fantasy project like 30 bajillion times, proving that it's a lot harder to write a draft perfectly the first time than expected, part of me still sort of always hopes that when I write a first draft, I'll just love it and won't have to change it much. The thought of just like writing a draft and getting all the way to the end just so that I can sort of scrap it and start again was always very discouraging to me, and it still is kind of discouraging to me. But at the same time, I think I'm starting to get it, that this is part of the process, and it's actually fantastic. Take Operation Ever, for example. If I was obsessed with getting everything right the first time and having everything sort of perfectly mapped out, would never have gone anywhere near NaNoWriMo this year. I would have said, no way, like, it's nowhere near ready. I need another solid 6 months at least to figure everything out. Not a chance, not doing Nano. But I went for it against my screaming plotter's instincts because I really didn't want to miss out on a Nano, so I dedicated what time I had to getting as many details ironed out as I possibly could so that I'd have something that I'd be ready to start writing in November. And even now, 50 pages in, I know that there are things that I'm not fully happy with. I know that there are clarity issues and ideas that are underdeveloped, but am I losing sleep over it? Am I spontaneously combusting? No, I'm not. It's all good, and it's actually very liberating to write a first draft where you're not concerned about perfection. You're actually just trying to get through it, get to the end, find out what the story is, knowing that, like, down the road, I will revisit this and I will make it better next time, but that is not the challenge of today. World building is a huge part of that in this particular project because that's probably what I spent the least time with in the outlining process. I focused mostly on the characters and on the sequence of events, the shape of the plot. I'm seeing that in my first 50 pages, that I haven't made it super clear what the setting, what the world actually looks like. Is it futuristic? Is it dystopic? Is it present but with like old-timey vibes? I'm pretty sure that I know the answer to that question, but I don't think it's translated very well onto the page, which is fine because I know that when I write another draft, I'll have to focus more on making that clearer at the beginning of the draft. But right now, my number one concern is just telling the story and learning about the characters. Think of it like a meet and greet, or like a month at summer camp, or November camp, I guess. I'm just throwing myself in with these characters, with this group of people that I don't really know that well, and I'm just going to spend this month getting to know them, letting them tell me about themselves and show me what they're like, and finding out what makes them tick and what doesn't make them tick, and just getting really well acquainted with them. I will be able to then take the story they tell me and tell it even better. That, I think, is one of the beauties of NaNoWriMo, and not just NaNoWriMo. Like, Nano is basically just a way of motivating writers. It's just a challenge to write as much as you can in a short time frame, and it's extra motivation because lots of writers are doing it at the same time. But you can set that challenge for yourself without NaNoWriMo easily. And the beauty of doing a challenge like that, trying to write a novel in a relatively short time frame, is that it forces you to just write without looking back. You can't afford to waste time self-editing and, spending half your writing time every day just perfecting what you wrote the day before and searching for the absolute perfect wording for everything. Sometimes, especially if you're a student or a parent or like just a normal person that has a life outside of writing, sometimes it's all you can do to get those 500 words or 1,000 words or 2,000 words in a day. You do not have time for all that perfectionism and obsession. It forces you to just keep moving forward, don't look back, write, and worry about perfection later. That is why I like Nano, because I am terrible for that. In my writing time, I spend way more time just rereading stuff I've already written than I do actually writing new stuff. These kinds of challenges are great for me because they force me out of those bad habits and they kickstart my productivity and my efficiency and just help me to get through first drafts way faster than I would on my own. So I would highly recommend a challenge like this. Just set yourself a writing goal within a relatively small time frame. I highly recommend making it a tight enough time frame that you don't have time to worry about perfection. The more I write, the more I see the value in that messy first draft that's full of mistakes. It's the first date where you're meeting your characters, getting to know each other really well, so that you can then go away and tell the story even better than they can tell it. And it might take a few tries, but that's fine because it's all practice and it's all writing, and there's no telling how God might use that first rough draft to hone you as a writer, for one thing, but also just make your story that much stronger later on. So that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope if you're doing Nano that it's going really well for you, and if you're not, that writing in general is going well for you anyway. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel so compelled, and as always, do not forget to spend some time in the clouds today.